A beautiful landmark rises over the city's skyline. In the Kenyan capital Nairobi, a giant structure made of steel and concrete with a waist that emphasizes the outdoor and physical experience of both visitors and residents. The GTC office skyscraper, which rises 184 meters into the sky, is the newest icon in Nairobi, East Africa's economic hub.
You realize that there was much thought not just to the occupants in the building, but also around and outside the building.
It is a true symbol of Kenya's booming real estate market and Nairobi's transformation into a contemporary metropolis.
This is a trend setter for us in Nairobi, for us in Kenya, and even in the African region.
The Global Trade Center is not just a tall building, but it is where international architectural styles meet.
Today, we are traveling up the sky to reveal incredible stories behind these structures and techniques that allowed them to venture into the sky. Nairobi, South Central Kenya. This pre-independent city is the biggest in Kenya. And being the country's capital city, it is booming. New buildings are rising up in almost every corner, but there is one that represents the overall upgrade of urban lifestyle in Kenya.
Well, when we talk about international architectural style, then we talk about the Global Trade Center. It is not just a tall building, but it is where architecture and engineering literally meets. Now today, we're gonna meet the men and women who are behind the construction of this engineering marvel. Join me.
With 42 floors, the GTC has become a model for Nairobi's ambition with its 4 benchmark of invaluable floors of global elites, intelligence, and capital. Today, some of the building's architects have come in to have a feel of the end product.
I think it's something which will leave a mark in my career and my life.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
When we started this project, there was absolutely, nothing. It was an old sort of residential hotel, a little club, there was lots of trees, and of course there was no value, to the city or to the owner. And now we've transformed it to a project that has so much value compared to what it was. There's virtually no architect who wouldn't be proud to be involved in such a prestigious project. It is actually virtually the biggest architectural project or building project in Nairobi, which means in the country.
Designing the Global Trade Center took a multinational approach with architectural companies Hausen from China, GMP International Architects of Germany, and Triad Architects from Kenya working together to come up with a building that suits global demand.
The GTC is our first project in Kenya and Nairobi. We have had other projects in many different parts of the world, South Africa to North Africa, but not in Central Africa and Kenya.
And so an in-depth study on the local conditions, like the kind of climate Nairobi has, had to be done before settling on the design the building had to take.
And Nairobi has a wonderful climate that is very mild and to the standards that we encounter in Northern Europe or also in South China, it's perfect living condition. So this was one of the findings which then also led to the decision that the GTC does not need too much mechanical operational supplies, but can be a fairly simple technology building and will still be very good.
It simply means architects and engineers had fewer climatical challenges to deal with when designing and constructing one of Kenya's tallest buildings.
This mild climate also helps structures to remain in very good condition and shape, as wind and weather doesn't tear so much on the construction.
The builders adopted a modern avant-garde architectural style as its general design concept, with a linear glossy facade that emphasizes its impressive height and simplistic lines.
The beauty about the structural design of the tower itself is that it is tube structure, meaning that the weight is spread to the walls, so it is being reinforced. So we don't need the pillars in the middle.
In this particular case, the client is one of the users of the building. So the quality was a primary factor in the design and delivery of the project.
Well, I'm standing on the 17th floor of the Global Trade Center in Nairobi, and clearly I'm able to see the entire capital city of Nairobi. When we are talking about skyscrapers, they are just here. Nairobi's tall buildings, I can see all of them. And also the newly built Nairobi Expressway here. I can see it like it's just where I'm standing, and I can count cars actually. I can count the number of cars passing on the Nairobi Expressway. From the 17th floor of the Global Trade Center, remember it has over 40 floors.
Nearly every corner of the Kenyan capital city is being transformed by new structures. However, one exemplifies the overall improvement of urban lifestyle in Kenya. The GTC office tower is the tallest building in Kenya in terms of occupiable space, with the 184-meter building having office spaces to the very top. The Global Trade Center in Nairobi is brimming with elements that are meant to excite. The ultra-premium complex includes an office tower, panorama decks, a JW Marriott luxury 5-star hotel, a boutique mall, lavish cosmopolitan residential buildings, and a rooftop with a helipad for the world's elite.
首先我们的写字楼的办公空间是按照国际这个商务黄金办公区域进行设置的。我们配套了很多，包括餐饮、娱乐、用品办公等相关的这个服务配套。
It is the first of its kind in East and Central Africa region. GTC has 6 towers, the tallest being the office tower.
This is a model for the GTC project. GTC stands for the Global Trade Center. It sits on 7.5 acres, that's 7.5 acres. We have 6 towers. This is the office tower, which is 42 floors high with a helipad on the roof there. We have a sky lounge on the 36th floor. That will be for the global elites to network. We have 3 A+ office quality spaces. Ground floor has 11 meters lobby. First and second floor is part of the GTC Boutique Mall, which is over here. We have over 11,000 square meters of retail space, currently leasing. Connecting you from, between the office tower and the JW Marriott, we have the 800 square meter pillarless ballroom. And on top of that, we have the swimming pool and the deck areas for sunbasking. That also belongs to the JW Marriott. And this whole tower here, 35 floors, is the JW Marriott 5-star luxury hotel. We have this area corridor connecting you to the GTC Boutique Mall as well. And now, on this other side of Chiromo Lane, we have the 4 residential towers.
Making a tall tower stand up is a huge engineering challenge. To understand how this tower can soar high in the sky, we turn our attention to men and women at the center of its construction.
I'm Tobias Keil, working for GNP, a German architect's office.
My name is Julius Kibwage. I'm an architect by profession. I work with Triad Architects, where I'm a partner.
My name is Sujesh Patel. I work for Triad Architects.
I was the project leader for the GTC, which we commenced in the Beijing office, and I took it to the Berlin office with me. So I've been with the project from the very first line that we did on an empty sheet of paper to this very moment.
China's real estate giant Avic International Real Estate Kenya Limited has so far invested 40 billion Kenyan shillings into the structure. Located in a city suburb, the construction incorporated a lot of considerations. The steel and concrete colossus needs extremely strong foundations. To achieve that, engineers needed to support the concrete core on a thick concrete base set directly into the bedrock.
The ground in most of Nairobi is actually not bad for foundations, or this area. In Upper Hill area, it's very rocky. Westlands is not as rocky as Upper Hill. Here we are in Westlands, but still parts of it are rocky. So we actually found from the studies of the ground that aspects of the site were fairly rocky.
And so to anchor the tower's outer steel structure, engineers must dig deeper into a fairly rocky surface.
Now, one thing about rock is it's difficult to excavate, as you can imagine. It's a hard surface and so on. Now, imagine what will it take to excavate rock? You have to blast it.
The location of the project will prove to be a challenge. Blasting in such a neighborhood will inconvenience others and will also reduce the stability and integrity of the neighboring structures. In a nutshell, blasting was ruled out.
So a system was used where a bit of drilling was done, which is time consuming because it also has to be quiet.
This will reveal a new engineering challenge. The ground had different soil textures. Some parts were rocky, while others had normal soil. For engineers, it was time to figure out design solutions that will fit its kind of ground while ensuring the integrity of the building. Of the 6 towers, the GTC office tower is the tallest and hence called for higher foundation requirements.
Particularly under that tower, the actual foundation is mass concreting. That the solution that was taken here, it's like what we'd call a floating foundation. all right? From one end to the other end, it's like a big boat. And it has to be thick enough to be able to withstand the differences in weight. It has to be big enough because the tower that is sitting on it.
That we're basically building on solid rock. So basements were extremely expensive, hard labor, chopping solid rock out. So we try to reduce the basements as much as possible, limit the space that we need to go into the ground. This is something different to usual high-rise buildings, where first thing is bring as much down into the ground as you can, so that the high tower has a good foundation underneath. In this case, we had a very shallow basement, but this basement was sitting on solid rock.
You can imagine a tall structure, it can move like that. So it has to be strong enough to be able to withstand any movement, in whichever way, in whichever direction. And it also has to withstand the pressures that building will take, all manner of pressures, whether it is wind, weight, earthquake, and so on.
They support the concrete core in a thick concrete base set directly into the bedrock.
We have heard of collapsing buildings in other parts of Nairobi, other parts of the country. And the main reason is that people ignore that foundations are very important. Even if it is just red soil and it looks like good red soil, and part of this site, had fairly good soil. But you have to remember the weight that the building is carrying. If you don't do it well, the foundation begins to settle, and you have a crack of your building because the rain has come, it has softened the ground, your building collapses.
Once embedded in the bedrock, engineers start to build up. It was time for the heavy steel columns. Steel was chosen as the perfect material for the tall tower.
But the columns themselves, this is the skeleton of the building. The columns themselves are primarily steel. Steel, we know, is a very strong material, a lot stronger than concrete. And the fact that we need a very strong structure from the lower levels, steel was the primary structure. Now, what happens in a steel structure, because of safety or fire and what have you, steel is not a very good material in terms of resisting fire. So it is actually surrounded by concrete to make it, fire resistant.
The tower was first built out as a steel skeleton before windows and other exteriors were added. Beams and vertical columns connecting each floor were riveted and bolted together. On top, engineers go for reinforced concrete as the core material.
We know that concrete requires steel reinforcement to make it strong. All concrete columns actually in reality have steel inside.
Once the steel skeleton and core is built, the rest is essentially just decoration. The steel and concrete colossus now stands as a marvel of engineering capabilities. For the internal spaces, best natural lighting and framing, the skyscraper uses low-E coated glass technology. The majority of indoor infrared radiation is also blocked by this technology, which also helps to maintain a stable temperature within the building and save energy for the air conditioning system.
More or less every element that you see on this building serves a purpose. Take the office tower with the slim, slender structures reducing to the top. It's a simple image that can be almost retraced with a few lines on paper. But for example, the vertical fins in the facade, they serve the purpose of sun shading. So we reduce the heat impact into the building.
This is what we call a curtain walling system, where it is basically one large window from the top of the building to the bottom. So it can be called, one structure that is 40 stories up. So the way it is done in sections that are mounted and joined together, and it forms a skin wall around the outside of the building. Now from top to bottom, and that is what we call a curtain walling system. Primarily, it gives visibility to the building. It is what you see. It is designed in such a way that it keeps out various elements. It should be strong enough to withstand wind force. The taller you go is quite a big factor in design of a building. So it has to be strong enough to withstand the wind process.
Now, what Julius Kibwage is talking about is this one. This is what we call the curtain walling. It looks like just one window coming from the upper floor to the ground one. And it's very heavy and hard.
Now, this in particular for this building, for security reasons, at the tower and in the offices and the hotels, you actually can't open the window and jump out and wave to somebody else. One of the reasons is that we don't want people to do that. You know, they can fall off by accident, commit suicide and what have you. You know, you don't want that. The other important issue is for security reasons. This glass is actually bullet resistant around the two tall towers, such that there's no way anybody can actually just come and, you know, shoot out to the next buildings wherever there's a target. And actually, because of the elevated position, you know, somebody who has ill intentions can actually, you know, shoot at neighboring buildings and neighboring targets. So that's not possible. Of course, it's possible, but you know, it's now made a lot difficult.
This project is a one-off, a unique project, because you don't get such large projects in Africa as a whole, and Kenya in particular, where you do a 40-story structure and a couple of 30-story towers within one development.
It is designed to redefine the lifestyle of the global elites and is built to satisfaction in terms of fashion, passion, and dreams.
From the day the award was given to the concept prepared by GMP to the day we delivered the project, it has remained the same. The ideas, the design, what was presented to the client is exactly what we delivered.
GTC is a good example of how space in a crowded city like Nairobi can be used to solve quite a number of issues.
You can engage with international clientele. You have 5-star hotel, JW Marriott's within the same complex. You have high-end residential units. So you can stay, live, play and work within one development, and which has a high-end quality to it.
514 apartments are housed in GTC's 4 apartment towers, 2 of which are serviced apartments managed by Pan Pacific, and the other 2 are apartments for sale. Watch out for more on this in our second episode. My name is Enoch Sikolia, and this is the Kenyan Historian.